The music is more than music to me. It go further than music, you know.
Robert Nesta Marley, formerly known as Bob Marley, was the first and debatably only superstar ever to emerge from the Third World. He rose from eager rural beginnings and blossomed into a man of such significance and influence that his attempted assassination in 1976 turned out to be politically motivated. Bob's musical influence is still felt all around the world today, but he was more than just a musician. He had a universal such quality in his messages that transcended race, color, and class. Bob was born in 9 Mile, St. Anne in Jamaica on the 6th of February 1945. His mother was a black Jamaican, Cedella Marley, and her husband, a white Englishman, Norval Marley, who soon left his Cedella to bring Bob up by herself. At the age of 12, Bob moved to Trenchtown, where they lived with a man named Toddy Livingston and his son, Neville. Bob's upbringing was not unique. However, his desire to sing and perform and offer hope through song was. Although he lived a short life, dying at only the age of 36, Bob released an unfathomable amount of incredible material. He worked on all aspects of his songs, from the instruments to the lyrics, to overlooking the production tracks, and even the editing and overdubbing process.
This is the house the father were living. The father were living here. So while he's living here, he put the woman down there.
Did Bob ever know Captain Marley later?
I couldn't say whether he had known his leader, yes or no.
What sort of man was his father?
He was an Englishman, a white man. His work was doing field work in the mountain as a supervisor for the ex-soldier and for there's a crown land, for the land inside the wood.
Was he well liked here? Did the people like him?
Oh, yes. He was well liked here. He was beloved of all.
That's Bob's house, right? Bob's used to be living over there. Long time now, about 16, 17 years old.
Is that where he lived before he went to Kingston?
Yeah, he was born there, born down the bottom, and he was living up here for a while.
Bob would eat out of the calabash and so forth. He would not eat out of any other plate or utensils. And he was living on a single bed inside this room here.
But you see, Bob was very different from most of the musicians that were in town. You see, Bob had a part of the country in his life already, which in most of the musicians in the town, they haven't been to country. They don't know what is about country. They don't know about time. They don't know about nature and all these things. That is what Bob really had over most of these musicians.
I and I now have words to really talk about Bob Marley for the good that he have done. Whether here in Jamaica or anywhere in the world. Can't find words to say of that man good that he have done. It's the Almighty who have to address the world on that topic. I cannot do, sir. Please. Blessed love.
Bob is a special man. You know, say anything Bob don't even look strange.
Bob was a part of Trenchtown. You understand? A real part of Trenchtown.
Really the suffering of the people.
Really, he really gives one the impetus to really go out there and try something. You know? Try something.
I think to Bob Marley show that Trenchtown with respect from where it was, bring it from a ghetto where it well be known as not very nice people. Him show it as a youth from the ghetto. Come show it boy, Trenchtown wasn't so bad. Good things can come out of it too.
Yeah. So you're very proud of Marley?
Very proud.
Yeah, that's more. Right music line.
Seeing that he was a part of Trenchtown, you know.
When he left Trenchtown, he came into Bull Bay then. He came into Bull Bay, he and Gabby. Gabby introduced him to Bull Bay, that Gabby Dread. He's not around. He first he have a home around a place they call Corner, just upon the hilltop.
And a scheme.
And then he have another one up the scheme. That way he was really resident and Judy Mott also come along with him and have a house top side him. So you see Bob Marley, Judy Mott, and Bunny Wailers. We all, you know, run up and down on the sun, you know, regularly. From there, you know, Jamaica, little dread who live there, we congregate there first in the morning time, you know. We cook and we smoke and things like that.
Father, we call upon thee, when we call upon the hearkening unto the voice of thy servant. Send the bull this cup of his man. Each and every one will take up this cup. Bless them with a sincere blessing, that they too shall say, yes, thou art the Almighty Jah, Master. Hear us sincere, O Jah, and bless us for eternal life forever.
He gave up his training to become a welder to pursue a music career. At the age of just 16, Bob fulfilled his lifelong dream and released his first single, Judge Not. He and his friend Bunny soon joined forces with Peter Tosh, and the Wailers were formed. They chose their name because they were all born crying. Their first song, Simmer Down, was an instant #1 in Jamaica. Early Wailers songs were based on the popular dance music, ska, but over time they slowed down the beat, preferring the bass-heavy sound, reggae. Bob's cry of exodus was a siren anthem to all the worlds to leave the wickedness of Babylon and to make the march back to the Holy Land of Ethiopia. Early songs such as Put It On reinforced his vision of peace and freedom. In 1966, the Wailers joined the Rastafarian faith and began to grow their locks. Their songs reflected the plight of the downtrodden people of Jamaica, trying to escape the slums of their cities. It was also in this year that Jamaica witnessed the arrival of Haile Selassie. Marcus Garvey's prophecy of a black king now seemed real in the eyes of all Jamaicans. Like many of his countrymen, Marley became convinced Selassie was Jesus Christ reincarnated. After Selassie left, the influence of Rastafarianism spread rapidly. Bob and the Rasta elders prophesied that Jesus would come again, but in another name.
In the early 70s, I went to live in Antigua, which is a Caribbean island. If you look at a map of the Caribbean islands, it's a man bending down, and Antigua is actually where the rear end is. After a couple of years living there, I noticed on the radio, the local radio station, which was called ZDK, that they were playing music by somebody called Bob Marley and the Wailers, which was different to all the pop music I'd enjoyed in England. Some bright spark came along with a sweatband of the colours, red, yellow and green. Red apparently represented the blood, yellow represented the sun, and green represented the earth. And then the words Bob Marley and the Wailers were being mentioned along with the words Rastafarian, Rastafari. And that was my real introduction that Bob Marley was something quite special.
Tony Calder was the former manager of the Rolling Stones, who lived in Antigua for several years, where he soaked up the local artists by listening to the radio. Tony had a friend called Richard Curry, who owned Jamaican-based record label Feder Records. Tony started to work with two artists, one called Pluto and the other Ernie Smith. Ernie was the man who introduced Tony to Bob Marley, a moment that changed his life.
So one night, Ernie Smith said to me, "You're coming with me. You're going to come and see Bob." He picked me up and we went there. I mean, it was like a hangar or a shed or a factory. It was about 2,000 people. It was hot, steaming, sultry, and the air was full of smoke. You were contact high within 10 minutes, no problem at all. But what was amazing to me was the fact I was the only white person in the whole place. And then Bob Marley came on. And for 2.5 hours, he performed, flowed, did everything. And when you're in the music business, there are always what you can class as ultimate gigs, real landmark gigs. And this was one of them. It was a very, very, very special night. The next day when we were having lunch, Ernie was there and Richard Curry was there, and I said, "I saw Bob Marley last night. Fantastic." I said, "Is he available to sign?" Slowly, Richard looked up from his food and said, he signed with that friend of yours, Blackwell.
Chris Blackwell signed the Wailers to his Island label in 1972. The result, Catch a Fire, released in 1973, was a breakthrough album with classic songs such as Stir It Up and Concrete Jungle on it.
Stir it up, little darling, stir it up. Come on, baby.
For the first time, a reggae band had access to the best recording equipment possible. But the Wailers disbanded in 1974, with each of the three members pursuing a solo career. Despite the breakup, Marley continued recording as Bob Marley and the Wailers, and in 1975, Marley had his international breakthrough with his first solo hit outside Jamaica with No Woman, No Cry from the Natty Dread album. The following year, he released Rasta Man Vibration, which reached the top 50 of the Billboard solo charts.
His music will be around forever. Mozart's music, Mozart's still influencing people. That was 400 years ago.
Somebody at Island Records called me up and said, Bob Marley and the Wailers are playing tonight, do you want to come? And I went, yeah, absolutely. And then I thought about it and I thought, no, I don't want to go. It's going to spoil the magic of that night. Because there are ultimate gigs, and when you're in, you go to gigs and some are good, some are bad, but there are ones that are so special you never ever forget them. And I suppose in a way it's like eating your favourite box of chocolates. You got to know when to stop. And I didn't want to go and see a different show because that show in Jamaica that night in Kingston had been absolutely spectacular.
He was going to be a superstar, whatever. He had that in him to go forth and tell the world, He educated himself to educate others.
Well, I assess him as the third world superstar of the day in the field of entertainment. He was not just a Jamaican singer, he was an international singer, because the message that he carried was the message of third world people all over the world. In doing so, of course, he helped to put Jamaican music on the map internationally.
Well, people believe that Bob was a prophet. I know Bob was a messenger. I won't stress his head about he's a prophet. I know that he's a messenger. His understanding was God owns everybody's conscience. You see, when a person is alone, they aren't alone. And that is what people have to answer for on the day of reckoning, So I don't think he would be as quarter if he didn't have that understanding.
All his aim, his desire was in music, nothing else, nothing else really that he was interested in. Beside, music, that was his main thing. What I really know is reggae music. He might play other music or interested in other music, but this is the one that I really know. Because you see, that's how he put the message out to the whole world, So he put out his message in song, that everybody should come together as one, live as one, and, nothing better than that. How good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. That's Bob's aim and his desire, to see everybody live in peace and harmony in this world. Because that's what let the world go round, love.
Bob went on to have several children, most of which followed their father's footsteps and went into the music business.
My father mean to me just being a father, really, and a teacher. But he's a teacher through actions more than words, By growing up around him as a child, and, children learn very easily by what they see, and especially by what their parents do, So we learn a lot from our father just by looking at him and what was going on around him.
He set a good example then?
Yeah, very good example. Believe in what you're doing, be strong in what you're doing, and don't be intimidated or don't let nobody disrespect you, Always keep your self-respect. Yeah.
What of the musical side, though? When did you first become interested in his music? Was it when you were first born, or when did you start picking up the music?
Well, as far as I can remember, you know, I mean, from I was very, very young, music was always around us. Our father music was always around us. So it's like it was just like inborn, really, you know, because from, as I said, from I was very young, it was always around, you know. So I think that it was picked up even subconsciously in our minds before we consciously realized that, yes, this is our father music and this is what it's doing out there and things like that. He's the one who teaches us everything that we know, singing and playing and things like that, because as his children, we followed his footsteps, you know, as an artist. I mean, it's also an inborn conception too, because all of our family is musician. Our grandmother is a musician, you know, our uncle is musician, our auntie is musician, all of the family is musician.
My father is the strongest influence we have in music and in life, and he's the one who caused us to be on this way, on this path. He's the one who first showed us this light, and then we search for it also, and then find it to be true, and we on that path also. So he's major influence, you know. So when we found it possible now that we could have some money to buy equipment, we put it back in the same place where our father's studio was, and renovated it, you know, because there's a very special vibes there and a good feeling.
Marley had become revered as a mystic and a prophet. His influence was noted by politicians. Throughout the island, civil war raged between rival political factions. And now that Bob had become an international celebrity, politicians sought to use him as a pawn in their power struggles. On the night of the 25th, December 1976, assassins crept into his mansion and opened fire. Bob, along with Rita and his manager Don Taylor, were hit. Bob's music became more and more politicized. He reflected this in songs such as Small Axe.
One particular song that stands out in my mind is a song called Small Axe. In this song, he's saying, if you're a big tree, then I'm a small axe and I'm ready sharp to cut you down. This was, you know, with reference to taking on the system.
So if you want a big tree, you're a small axe, ready to cut you down, to cut you down.
Marley left Jamaica at the end of 1976, and after a month-long recovery and writing retreat, he arrived in England, where he spent 2 years in self-imposed exile. During his time in London, he was arrested and received a conviction for possession of a small quantity of cannabis. In 1978, Marley returned to Jamaica and performed at another political concert, the One Love Peace Concert, again in an effort to calm warring parties. Near the end of the performance, by Marley's request, the leaders of the conflicting parties joined each other on stage and shook hands.
The most remarkable event that happened in Bob Marley's career to me is when his manager took the bullet. We've seen all the movies about the security people around the American president. Would you take the bullet? He apparently, if I can remember rightly, he was at home or in his manager's house and some assassin came in to shoot him, and Don Taylor, his manager, leant across him and took the bullet. Now, in Jamaica, there's always been terrible violence to do with politics and elections. I think it was at the time of one of the elections, and both parties tried to claim him as their own so that they could get his followers to vote for their party. And it was a political situation. Somebody obviously felt it was better to have him off the scene, and then he couldn't be used by either party. Well, being a manager, you think about that and think, my acts are quite nice, but I don't think I'm going to take the bullet for them.
There was a politician thing going on in Jamaica at the time, you know, trying to pull him on this side, you know, what party. But because he was on God's side, you know, they never agree with that. So they tried to frighten him.
Bob Marley was shot by a politician, you know. Yeah? To be a president in Jamaica, you have to be corrupted. Any kind of politician, you have to be corrupted. I don't think Bob Marley would want to be a president because politics is too corrupted.
Whether or not Bob Marley would have made a good politician is difficult to say. I think he might have declined to be a politician, but I think he would have made a great politician's advisor.
If he was an MP, the area would be positive, you know? Anyone would tell you if he was an MP, you know? But the politician, very dangerous, you know? Politics is life and death, you know? Very selfish.
How could a man who fight against politics become a politician? You see? Bob Marley was more like a revolutionist. Yeah? Bob Marley was like the vice for Rasta because the things what Rasta was saying in Jamaica, Bob Marley could say it for them through the music. And the way Jamaica is, you have one television station at those days, yeah? And most people listen to the radio. Or you buy the paper. Some people couldn't afford the paper. So a lot of people listen to the music. That's why you have reggae music more times so well political in a way, because people can get the message where they want to hear through the music. You see? So Bob music is like a vice Rasta, because everything time you hear Bob talk about Rastafari, you know, because there was nothing else than a Rasta. You see?
Ghetto youth, tired of the constant political infighting, banded together in a mammoth reggae concert for peace. It ended with Prime Minister Michael Manley and opposition leader Edward Seaga on stage, shaking hands in an appeal for peace. The man responsible for it all, they say, was Bob Marley. Bob, you've been labeled a powerful political individual. How do you regard that?
Well, I mean, yeah, we try to make really bring peace, knowing that we really can't solve a problem with a war, you know. It doesn't really solve a problem. We don't feel like really killing someone. Whose problem am I going to solve when I kill someone? You know what I mean? So I figured the peace is the best thing. And that's why I go ahead and work with it, because it was a spiritual thing that happened.
But isn't what you need some sort of social, legislative change? The economic conditions are bad. You have a lot of people who are unemployed.
What's really going to happen now is that we don't really want the island to change. We want the world to change.
And his music is how he gets his message across. Rastafarianism is very popular in Jamaica, yet in Canada and the United States it has a bad reputation. People are associated with drugs and the trafficking of marijuana and violence, police arrests.
Yeah, man, them crucified Christ, remember? Christ was a Christian and them crucified Christ. Him is not what it is.
No, but let's go back to the facts. People have been arrested, and the Rastafarians in Toronto, for example, have a very bad reputation.
I mean, you know, I wouldn't say that the Rastafarians have a bad reputation. I would say people give the Rastafarians bad reputation because the Rastafarians, I mean, you know what I mean? All of these things happening before the Rastafarians even start coming to Canada anywhere around here.
But the things that are very obvious are things like the way you look. Right? To most people who are very conservative in dress, you look quite strange. Plus the fact that you advocate smoking marijuana.
Yeah, you think this. I'll show you this now. Could they tell God that it's not legal?
No, but
they couldn't tell God that it's not legal.
You have a very strong religious belief, but other people don't necessarily share that. And what they see are the obvious things. And isn't it, in fact, true that many Jamaican people get involved in the trafficking of marijuana and therefore get the bad reputation associated with Rastafarians?
People get trafficking. You see, I don't really know anything about those parts of life, you know. All I know about is Rastafari, you know, and try bringing this truth to the people. What the people do with them life, I don't really know about that. I know about my own.
Okay, what is your own? What's your music to you?
The music to me, the music is more than music to me. It go further than music, you know. It go with I don't know, it further than music.
But you used it as a strong message. I mean, words like a hungry man is an angry man.
The music used me.
Whatever it is, there's no doubt Bob Marley knows how to use his music. 12,000 people, more than half of them white, came to hear him perform. And in a trance-like mystical state, he carried them with him and left them shouting for more. Despite this obvious commercial success, he appears to live the life he preaches.
I think if Bob Marley was able to look down at his career, he would be quietly satisfied in the fact that he was so much a believer in his Rastafarian religion. And his commitment to that religion stopped people laughing at him, stopped people making a joke of him, because they realized he was very happy with his religion.
He had a bigger mission. You know, his mission wasn't like, he understood that he could tell the people, you know. So his music, he did it from his heart and from his experience, you know.
He was not afraid of venturing into other spheres, you know, to achieve what he needed to enhance his lyrics and get his word over, you know.
I think Baba was inspired by the people. Herb is a thing now where it's not every Rastaman smoke herb who I know. I know some Rastaman who smoke herb, and I know enough people who are not Rasta smoke herb. I believe herb is a thing like some people who sit down and have a glass of wine. And next guy would have a cigarette. So now, to me, herb is like for some people when they have some time to self and relax. Because imagine you're on stage and sing, or in the studio record, you're not going to really build up a spliff or a lick a chalice pipe. You see? So when you relax now in your comfort of your home or somewhere and you want to burn a spliff, you burn a spliff. You have some people who don't even smoke, so they probably have a drink of the tea. You see? Which is more powerful than smoking a spliff. You know?
They talk about legalizing this thing because they didn't see no harm in it whatsoever. It's something that, it's a drug that is used daily in Jamaica, and I would think at least 70 to 80% of all Jamaicans sometime or another have tried this drug.
His belief in marijuana was his belief, and he stuck to it, would not take any threat from any society, any law organization.
During his short lifetime, Bob had risen from the ghettos of Kingston to become one of the most influential performers the world has ever seen. Through his music and words, he had almost single-handedly brought the sound of reggae and the message of Rastafarianism to millions around the globe. But despite his fame, he never lost touch with his one humanity or his roots, nor for a vision for a better and more just world for all people, regardless of race, creed, or color. Bob played a huge role in internationalizing Jamaican music, which was supported by the Prime Minister.
I myself was a minister in the then government, responsible for the arts and culture, and attempted to internationalize it. At that time, it was a different rhythm known as the ska. We were successful only to a point. And one of the reasons why it could not be successful to more than a point was that there wasn't a Bob Marley at the time who could capture public imagination and whose creative music was more than the normal types of lyrics one finds in popular music, but had a message that transcended peoples, colors and creeds, and dealt with the protests of a large section of the world.
He's also very significant, I think, because he's one of those rare figures that come along perhaps once in a generation who, by some chemistry of themselves, their own genius, takes what is up to then just a folk form and makes it a part of the universal art of the world.
Did you see him as a political figure in any way? I mean, he was invited to the Zimbabwe independence celebrations, which he attended, and there was an assassination attempt on him just before he was to give a concert which some people saw as being a sign of support for you in the election before last.
Yes. The political figure, yes. Political figure, no. Political figure, no, in the sense that Bob was not by temperament or mind the kind of person who would ever become, say, a part of a party. Bob wasn't at that length, at that level, on that wavelength at all. Political, yes, in that he was one of the most articulate troubadours of the ghetto, its suffering, its pressures that I have ever heard. And the interesting thing about him is that as he grew in stature, as he became a millionaire, for example, one often wondered, will he tend to go soft, to become gimmicky, to try to appeal to a more commercial market by compromising his statement. And instead, he remained absolutely uncompromising. The range of his interests grew, said he would sing of Zimbabwe as well as Trenchtown in Jamaica. But the concern remained absolutely the same, uncompromisingly the same.
Survival, a defiant and politically charged album, was released in 1979. Tracks such as Zimbabwe, Africa Unite, and Survival reflected Marley's support for the struggles of Africans. In 1980, he released Uprising, his final studio album, which was one of his most religious productions.
Reggae really came out of Jamaica. It was really defined, honed, polished, and promoted by Bob Marley, who never ever forgot that as long as it was reggae, it still had to be a good song.
What made him a genius was his ability to regurgitate parables and to sing a song that many people in different walks of life could identify with. You know, someone sings something and go, yeah, I know what he's talking about. You know, or I've been there. You know, or I've seen that happen.
The songs Bob sang, they were, logic and common sense.
Like, no use crying over spilt milk. These kind of proverbs, you know. He knew how to write songs that would make you wish you'd written it. You know, you hear a new Bob Marley song, you think, oh, why didn't I think of that? You know, something that was staring you in the face, as it were, you know. But it was a bit too obvious, and he would just take that, all these elements, and put them together.
My understanding is that if Bob Marley was in a society where he may be a rich kid and stuff like that, well, he probably still do music because I think he born that way. He born with a gift enough to do music, you know, so probably he will still do his music, you see? Because I know plenty rich guy who do music, you know what I mean?
Bob Marley always made money. Whether he kept a hold of it or whether it was given to him, he always made money. Because from day one, he was a popular artist, you know. Whether or not he himself reaped the benefits of having made money, I shall never know. I've never been privy to his private affairs, but I hope so.
Bob was a very kind-hearted person, you know, and I have a lot of friends and so on. So I didn't think money really changed Bob.
No, the money didn't change Mr. Marley. I think that it changed the people around him, you know.
I think the Rastafarian movement had a lot to do with the way Bob turned out, because he immersed himself, you know, in it and was in search of righteousness, I would say.
Being around when we used to go and visit him at the hotel, you know his temperament, you you get to know the person. And he was a number one. He was an ace person, you know, genuine. It wasn't that he was the name that made him the person, you know. He was a person before the name, you know, he's a strong person.
Marley's last concert occurred at the Stanley Theater in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on 23 September 1980. Shortly afterwards, Marley found out that cancer had spread throughout his body, and the rest of the tour was cancelled. He then went to the Bavarian clinic of Joseph Hissels, where he received a controversial type of treatment based on avoidance of certain foods, drinks, and substances, which sadly had no success. He battled cancer for 8 more months when he decided to travel home to Jamaica, but had to fly via Miami, where his condition worsened. He died in Miami on the 11th of May, 1981. His final words to his son Ziggy were, "Money can't buy life."
Bob Marley's belief as a Rastafarian was that you didn't use Western medicine. You tried to live the life as laid down. And when he was diagnosed to having cancer, which started, I believe, in his foot, he refused all Western medical treatment. To him, the body was a temple. And if God had decided you were to leave, you had to prepare yourself to leave. The only thing that was available to him was what we would call alternative medicine. And I remember he went to a clinic where they put him on a very special diet and very special water and mixtures and herbs and what have you. But basically it was too late. So if people come along and say there was a conspiracy, somebody wanted to kill him, it was over. He knew his time had come, and in the end he admitted, according to the stories that I've read, that the treatment he had in this clinic helped him prepare himself for a peaceful end.
As the man who popularized reggae music around the world, Marley was the third world's first real superstar. He was just 36 when he died of cancer 11 days ago. The hearse carrying his body was escorted by a motorcade that had driven the 60 miles north from Kingston. Thousands of Jamaicans lined the streets to watch it pass, and it was a remarkable climax to what was surely the most extraordinary funeral ever given to a pop singer. But then Bob Marley was no ordinary pop singer, as Robin Denslow reports from Jamaica.
Every man think his burden is the heaviest. Every man think his burden is the heaviest.
For 2 days, Kingston almost came to a standstill as Jamaicans by the tens of thousands paid tribute to the third world's first superstar. For Jamaicans, Marley wasn't merely a great singer and writer, but more a national hero and prophet. It was taken for granted that the Prime Minister and opposition leader would attend the funeral, or that the budget debate should be delayed for a week because of a pop star's death. Sound systems, Kingston's omnipresent mobile discos, blasted out his songs as the crowds waited outside the National Arena to file past his body.
Can't run away from yourself. Can't run away from yourself.
Okay, keep running. Marley was brought up in Kingston's toughest slums and sang rebel music. He might not have been surprised that there was a little trouble even at his funeral. It's been a peaceful funeral demonstration so far, but suddenly the police are tear-gassing the crowd. We don't yet know why. Tear gas exploding up behind me now. Marley's songs mixed direct, tough or compassionate lyrics with a magnificent gift for melody. Bob Marley was born in St Anne's in the north of the island, but in his early teens he moved here to the ghettos of Trenchtown in Kingston. The wooden shack where he lived is no longer there. It's been redeveloped as part of what Marley called the concrete jungle. It was in the tenement yards around here that he first started to sing.
Bob Marley was the king of reggae, the music of his native Jamaica that made him an international superstar. He was also a disciple of the Jamaican cult of Rastafarianism, wearing his hair in the distinctive long dreadlocks and using marijuana as a sacrament. He smoked up to a pound of it a week.
Marley took his songs from the ghettos of Trenchtown to the concert halls of New York, London or Tokyo. He was forced to move out of Jamaica after an assassination attempt in December '76, just before he gave a concert that was seen as a sign of support for Michael Manley in the elections. He returned in '78 for a peace concert celebrating a short-lived truce between the Kingston gangs that was attended by Michael Manley, then Prime Minister, and opposition leader Edward Seaga. Many people in Britain might find it bizarre that a Prime Minister should be reading the eulogy at the funeral of a pop star and that the budget debate should actually be postponed because of the event.
The Prime Minister is reading the eulogy because, quite apart from being Prime Minister, I myself have a background in folk music and anthropology and took a very personal interest in the development of Jamaican popular music. And as for the postponement of the budget debate or the deferment of it for 1 week, that was inevitable because the death has created a mood. And in that mood, in a small country such as ours, it isn't the right climate to put forward the presentation of the first budget of this new government.
The funeral service was a curious mixture of Rasta religious ceremony and pop concert. Inside, the hall was decorated with Jamaican and Rasta colours and pictures of nationalist hero Marcus Garvey and Haile Selassie. The hall was filled with the robed priests of the Rastafarian Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Marley's success has given the Rastas a new status. And even the Prime Minister threw in Rasta references in his eulogy.
Of his many musical creations, it may be said that special places are reserved for 4. Trenchtown Rock, the symbol of his life. No woman, no cry, his comforting hand of compassion. One love, his vision of peace and unity. And Rastaman vibrations, his deep mystical faith.
At the end of the service, there were songs from the Wailers and Marley's singers, the I3s, including his wife Rita in the middle. And later, 2 of his sons were invited to dance on stage just a few feet from their father's coffin. For the entertainment business, Marley was the man who popularised Jamaican music around the world. For Jamaicans, he was a mixture of ghetto rebel, mystic, musician and prophet, untainted by success. Bob Marley was far more than a pop star.
Since his passing on May 11, 1981, Bob Marley's legend looms larger than ever, as evidenced by an ever-lengthening list of accomplishments attributable to his music, which identified oppressors and agitated for social change, while simultaneously allowing listeners to forget their troubles and dance. Bob Marley was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1994. In December 1999, his 1977 album, Exodus, was named Album of the Century by Time magazine, and his song, One Love, was designated Song of the Millennium by BBC. These triumphs are all the more remarkable considering Bob Marley's humble beginnings and numerous challenges he overcame, attempting to gain a foothold in Jamaica's chaotic music industry while skillfully navigating the politically partisan violence that abounded in Kingston throughout the 1970s.
There have obviously been artists that were bigger than Bob Marley after him, like Michael Jackson, Aerosmith, the return of the Rolling Stones, the return of other bands. But he was unique because he represented reggae. He was the pinnacle. He was the leader.
Bob Marley and John Lennon, you mean, in heaven looking down, thinking if it was worth it. Oh yeah, Definitely, definitely, because their influence has influenced millions, you know, and it was rare before them. So it had to be something good for the people, them, you know. Influence him in love, influence him in peace, how to live with one another, that you can. You know, I always say, we wasn't born through war, we was born through love. We come and see war through politics, religion, and you know what I mean?
So what do you think his basic lesson was then in his music?
Basic lesson was freedom and justice for all people, you know, especially for African people too. Freedom of Africa and the justice of Africa. Yeah.
If Bob, if you choose a place to rest, him, I probably want to rest in Ethiopia.
There's never been another artist like Bob Marley. There's only one Bob Marley.
Bob Marley is not the godfather of reggae. Bob Marley is the king of reggae.
I don't think any of it would have stopped Bob. I don't think nothing would stop Bob at all.
If Bob was here today, I would like to say, the seed what you planted has flourished and you are seeing it to reap it, my son. Bless. Mm-hmm.
If you're out there listening, mate, somewhere out in Zion there, I would like to say thanks for the memories, and it's been great listening to your music over the years. And I've been a fan since the early 60s, and I'm still a fan today.
Well, the influence which our father have on music is that him bring the people voice to the world, the voice of the people. And it influenced other artists to do the same thing and to use music in a way that not only for make money or entertain, but for educate and enlighten people. So it influenced other artists for enlighten people to through the music what them do.
I think if Bob Marley was in whatever Rastafarian heaven or bardo that he may be in and is looking down at what's happened in the world since he left, I actually think he would be very proud of the monument of work left behind and the fact that he took a stand. He believed in his religion. He didn't care whether people made a mockery of him. He believed that you could smoke marijuana. It was a special herb. He smoked all day, every day. And I think a lot of that showed the way that people shouldn't criticize. He laid down a view. He was like the snowball at the top of the mountain. The little snowball gets dropped and it starts to roll down. It becomes a bigger, bigger snowball. And I think he had, especially in this country, and probably in a lot of European countries, and even in America, his example of, I'm a dope smoker, he made it a positive situation, not a negative one. And I think today, if he was looking down, he'd have a little smile on his face thinking, well, maybe a little of that's been down to me, but I presume he'd have a joint in the other hand.
One of the 20th century's most charismatic and challenging performers, Bob Marley's renown now transcends the role of reggae luminary. He is regarded as a cultural icon who implored his people to know their history